What's up everybody, welcome back to my channel. In this video we are going to talk about FPV drone stabilization. Now say you had a GoPro, you could use the GoPro software that will allow you to stabilize the video with certain exceptions, etc, but not all of us can afford GoPros. So what do we get? We get things like these run cams over here. We get things like the Orca Caddx Orca camera. We get things like, well, this is a GoPro session, but the reason why I am mentioning it is because this software can also stabilize session video as well as, the GoPro 7, and I also have a GoPro 8 somewhere around here. But the bottom line is, if you want to use cameras like this that do not have very good in-body stabilization or electronic stabilization or whatever you want to call it, which actually makes your video even worse than it originally was without stabilization, then continue watching this video because we're going to get right to it on how to do this, all in the newest update of Davinci 17 coming up. Now I'm going to throw a lot of information out there to you for you to be able to grasp what I'm trying to explain. I think this is pretty important information. I'm going to try to leave out as much, other things as I possibly can. But I think for now, what I'll do is I'm going to throw out as much information as I can, and then you can skip through the video using the links in either the description or the comments, and then that way you can get to where you want to go, pretty quickly. Because a lot of people tell me, well, you talk too much or you don't give enough details. So I'm going to give all the detail that I think is important for you to know in this whole video. But if you already know this information or you just don't care and you just want to get to the end, then go ahead and click on the links down below over there, and then you can just get to the information and get to where you need to go. But I highly recommend that you stay on this video from beginning to end, so that way you can understand what I'm trying to get at and the reasons why I ended up going the route that I did. So let's get to it. All right. So a lot of people will run GoPros, but at the end of the day, I can't really afford GoPros when I'm flying FPV because I either lose the quad in the water. You can see in my previous video, I'll post a link up there, or I crash it into the ground, concrete, grass, doesn't matter, these things will break. Now, I will use this if I'm planning to record video footage for like YouTube or for this channel, but for the most part I will not be using this if I'm, say, practicing tricks or anything like that and I want to review the footage after. Yes, I can use the DJI footage, but what if I do something good and then I end up posting it on YouTube? I want something a little bit better than the one that the air unit would record, or actually the goggles would record. That leaves us with other solutions like the Runcam 5 and the Caddx Orca. These are two very good cameras, not as good as GoPro as far as image quality, but they're still very good for the price. I paid $100 each for these, and then this is the E4K, which you can get on the eBay website for like 75 bucks. I just stripped it down so it weighs something like 35 grams or something like that, but it's a pretty good camera as well. It's just very fragile. When you crash with this, it's pretty much dead. So I'm not sure if Davinci 17 free version has a stabilization function available to you. If you don't, please post it in the comments below so others who watch this video will know that you actually need the studio version in order to stabilize your video. If not, and you can stabilize your video with the free version, then better yet. All right, so in this section in the video, I want to talk about the actual steps that you have to do before you run it through the Davinci 17 image video stabilization software. And it's important. I've tested this. I've tested it many ways, and this is the best way that I can find. So the very first thing you want to try and do is, well, bottom line, become a better pilot. I know it's hard, it's not easy. FPV is one of the hardest things I've had to learn, and I'm still learning, and I'm nowhere near where I want to be right now. But at the end of the day, a better pilot will get you better footage, and that's what you want to work on. But if you're like me, I want to try and hide all my mistakes because I am a newbie pilot, and so I'm going to use video image stabilization software as much as I can, and the best one out there that I can find, so it kind of makes me look a little better, right? Who wouldn't want that? Number 2, make sure that you properly tune your drone. Sometimes your drone is so not tuned, it'll shake like crazy, and the image stabilization software or the video stabilization software, whichever one you decide to use, Davinci, Deshaker, the GoPro solution, is going to have a harder time stabilizing your video, and you're going to have to crop in even more in order for that stabilization to have a better effect. So basically, tune your drone, get it as tuned as you can. I'm not a tuner. I get it to where it's flyable, and that's it. I mean, I still get prop wash and all that, whatever. I just don't want my motors to burn up and you know, fly to the moon or just desync into the ground. Either way, tune your drone as best as you can, because that would definitely help. Number 3, all right, now getting to the good stuff, the stuff that actually matters, the stuff that's pertinent to the actual software itself, is that this camera, this is the Caddx Orca, this is the Runcam Orange, this is the GoPro Hero 7, just a E4K, whatever. They all have EIS. Electronic image stabilization built in. The GoPro 7 has this thing called Hyper Smooth, works very well, works probably better than any of the other cameras in my hands right now. But you know, sometimes image stabilization built into the camera, or EIS, makes the video even worse than what you want it, and it makes the video even worse than if you didn't even have it turned on in the first place. See, what happens is, if the camera is just shaking, you know, stationarily shaking and just having little vibrations, the built-in EIS would probably work and take that out, so it's not going to even be that much of a big deal. But we're FPV freestyling, we're going circles, we're doing all kind of stuff. The built-in EIS will actually make your video footage kind of skip. It'll kind of, I mean, you guys probably already experienced that. So disable that in camera, because there's no video stabilization post software that's going to be able to fix that, because you're missing frames. It's just not there. Disable them, turn them off. You want to see all the vibrations, whatever, and then that way Davinci 17 software can see it, kill it, and make you actually look like 100% better FPV freestyle pilot. All right, so number 4, the thing about number 4, and again, I'm not going to get into any of the ISO or whatever settings, but whatever you have to do to get rid of that jello, yeah, you don't want that jello in your image, in your footage. That'll really mess with the software. When Davinci looks at jello, it's going to be like, what the hell is that? And it's just going to try to stabilize jello, and it's just not going to look good at all. Do what it takes to get rid of your jello. If you got to put it like on a super soft mount like this, or if you have to lock your shutter speed settings to say 120 if you're doing 60 frames per second, or you know, things like that. Everybody's situation will be different, obviously. Yeah, there's a number 5. Actually, it's only 3 that really matter. The first 2 is kind of obvious. But number 5 is basically, what was number 5? I don't remember what number 5. What is number 5? Number 5? Number 5, I recorded 4K 30 frames per second. Yep, and I ran it through the software, and it kind of had a hard time. I don't know what it is. I'm not an expert editor or anything like that. I'm just a simple guy that downloaded editing software, and I clicked the stabilize button and wish for the best. And when I recorded in 4K 30 frames per second on the Runcam 5 specifically, I ran it through the video image stabilization software on Davinci 17, and it didn't work so well. I don't know why. So I thought maybe, okay, it's not the resolution, obviously, because I can do it in 2K 30 and it would be the same thing. So instead I did 2K 60. Yes, that's right. I would highly recommend that you record in 60 frames per second. I know a lot of you like to record in 24 frames per second, even 30 frames per second, because it hides a lot of the other stuff. Record in 60 frames per second if you want to stabilize your video in Davinci 17. If you find that it's not accurate, or I'm lying, post a comment below and show me the video. It's fine. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but what I found was if you record anything less than 60 frames per second, Davinci 17 has a harder time stabilizing your video. So record, in my opinion, 2.7K in 60 frames per second. All right, now that I explained everything that I believe that you should know before you actually try to use Davinci 17, let's actually use Davinci 17. I'll shut up now and let's get to it. Alright guys, now we are in Davinci 17, and I just wanted to mention straight up from the get-go, if you think that this is going to be as good as Real Steady Go, you might be very disappointed. However, as an alternative solution, because you don't have a GoPro, and obviously maybe it's because you can't afford a GoPro, or maybe you can afford a GoPro but you just can't afford crashing the GoPro over and over and over again, and as a freestyle FPV pilot, you know that's going to happen, as we all already know. Davinci 17's video stabilization is an excellent, in my opinion, video stabilization software, and it's also great because it's built into the software. You don't have to export, import, and do all those things, and it's all going to be part of your video stabilization or FPV video workflow. So let's just get right into it here. Davinci Resolve, the Studio 17 version that I am using is 17.2.2 build number 4. This example of this video is based off of this version of Davinci. What I want to mention is, in the beginning I said that you need to record, in my opinion, at a minimum 2K 60 frames per second, and the reason for that is, for whatever reason specific to Davinci 17, if you record in 60 frames per second and your timeline is 30 frames per second, for some reason it can stabilize your video a lot better. I mean, it is a night and day type of stabilization versus filming in 30 frames per second and having a 30 frames per second timeline, or even a 60 frames per second recorded video on a 60 frames per second timeline. From the top over here, if you look at my mouse, it says timeline number 1. I'm going to go to the left part of my menu in the media pool, and I'm going to right click on timeline 1. I'm going to go to my timeline settings over here, and you're going to see that the timeline frame rate is 30 frames per second. However, my actual video is 60 frames per second, or that's what I recorded it in. It's not a secret. I don't know what it is, but it's just from experimentation. This is what I found to work the best for me, and so hopefully it will work good for you. The kind of symptoms that will come out when you have a 30 frames per second with a 30 frames per second timeline, and then you try to stabilize, or conversely 60 frames per second with a 60 frame per second timeline, you'll get all these jitters and these wobbles and all this kind of weird things going on. I don't know if Davinci Resolve fixed that issue in these later versions, but you know, we'll see. By the time you watch this video, it might have a better version, and may have already fixed the problem, but as of now, this is what works, and what works the best to my knowledge. Alright, now let's just get into it as to how to stabilize. Now again, when I mentioned Davinci 16 and 17, Davinci 17 being a lot better than 16, one of the good things is that the stabilization, once you stabilize a clip, you know, it kind of almost like caches all the information that you need. So if you make a slight change to edit the stabilization portion of the software, you don't have to re-render and re-stabilize the whole clip all over again. Now, the amount of time it takes to stabilize a single clip is highly based off of your computer hardware and how fast your computer can operate with Davinci Resolve. What I basically did was I pre-stabilized all these 3 clips over here, and I'll get into why you do not want to merge these clips into a compound clip first and then stabilize it, because you want to just do one, click a button, and then have everything stabilized. There's a reason why I haven't compounded these clips yet. So if you highlight a clip here, or anywhere on your timeline, a clip that you want to stabilize, if you go on the top right corner of your Davinci 17 software, you're going to see an inspector tab. You click on the inspector tab, and you're going to have all these options. From here, you just scroll down where it says stabilization, and you open that up. Now, if you can see over here, the stabilization portion is very, very simplistic, and that's what I love about Davinci 17, is how simple it is. So let's just get right into it. Now, by default, you're going to have mode here, and again, I've already stabilized these clips, which is why these settings are like this, but by default you're going to have the mode set to perspective, but you're also going to have similarity and translation. So the best for FPV freestyle footage, in my opinion, is definitely similarity. Of course, you can try it yourself to use the other options, but similarity is the best, in my opinion, from my experience. By default, camera lock is not checked, and make sure you keep it unchecked, because you do not want camera lock checked for stabilization stabilizing FPV footage. Zoom is by default checked, and what Zoom does is every time you stabilize a video, no matter what software you use, it has to crop into the video. As you crop into the video, it's going to leave black borders and things like that around the image. So the zoom being checked off, the software will crop that in for you, so you don't have to worry about it. Again, you can play with this being off and on if you would like. However, I like to leave it checked off so I don't have to worry about it. Now here's the interesting part. The next one is cropping ratio. Cropping ratio by default is going to be at 0.50. So if you raise this all the way up to 0.90 as you saw earlier, and this is my baseline, this is what these settings is what I use as a starting point for stabilizing all my footage. So if you have 0.90 here, it's not actually cropping in 90% of your video footage. It's actually the opposite and cropping in 10% of your video footage. So if I bring this down to 0.800 as an example, now it's going to crop in 20%, so on and so forth. If I drop it down to 0.700, then it's going to be a 30% crop. And let me give you an example right now on what that looks like. So stabilization is turned on. If I disable stabilization, you're going to see that I get more resolution out of my image. Now this is one of the reasons why I say that you want to record at minimum at 2K, and the reason is if you record in 1080p 1440p, this video here, unfortunately I recorded in 1440p, and the reason for that is my software is a lot more responsive. So for the purpose of making this video, I kept and recorded this image at 1440p. I used SuperView to expand the image, but this is an example. This was set to the cropping ratio, it was at 0.900, and again, this is where I like to start. If I have a very smooth video, or a lot smoother video than this one, then I would crank this up to maybe 0.95. If you go to 1.0, then you basically get no stabilization at all, so you just might as well just disable it because you're that good of a pilot, right? And because this is a cached type of stabilization piece of software, unlike Davinci 16, Davinci 17, if I just hit stabilize, it'll do it in just a few seconds versus go through the whole process all over again. So now I can show it to you again. So cropping ratio, I have it at 0.731, so that's roughly about 28%. Let me disable stabilization, and then you're going to see how much more it crops in when stabilization is turned on, and you can see that's a dramatic difference between 0.70 and 0.900. So just keep that in mind, that the more you crop in, the worse your image quality is going to be, and also that is dependent on the kind of camera that you use. 1080p can still have better image quality than a 2K or a camera filming in 2K, dependent on the camera and the lens and all that other good stuff. So I'm just gonna restabilize this and put it back up to 0.900. The next option below cropping ratio is called smooth. Smooth by default is 0.250. You don't want to touch this. You don't want to ever touch this. Every time I touch this, things go wonky on my video. So just as a rule of thumb, you don't need to touch this, so leave that to the default. The next one is strength. Now strength, I believe by default is going to be at 1.0. I could be wrong, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that if the strength is at 1.0, that is the maximum capability that Davinci 17 is going to use as a setting to maximize your stabilization. So what I mean by that is, if you bring this all the way down to negative 1.0, you basically are not going to get any stabilization at all. And if you bring it all the way up to 1.0, then you're going to have the best stabilization that Davinci can offer you. However, this can cause issues, and I'll get to that later on in this video to kind of identify what to look for and how to adjust the strength options. So the only two options that you're going to really need to worry about is the cropping ratio, but not so much the actual crop versus the actual strength of the stabilization. And again, I'll get into why you want to edit the strength. And normally when I edit the video and I run through the video after it's stabilized, strength is the only one that I touch. Alright guys, before I get into the actual examples of how well Davinci 17 stabilized this video, I have these 3 clips here, and I wanted to just mention that the reason why I don't turn this into a compound clip and then stabilize the video later is because if you want to make changes on a per clip basis, how strong of a stabilization you want, for example, one clip over here could be a strength of 1.0 and this one over here might be a strength of 0.70. If you had it all in one compounded clip, then you're going to have a strength of just 0.70 while the other two could have been at 1.0. So keep it separate, and if you got to compound it later, then that'll work too. Again, I'm not a pro, so I don't really know if this is the right or correct workflow for Davinci 17, but it works for me, so that's just maybe something helpful for you, just as a quick tip. Alright guys, let's just get into the stabilization examples. And the first example is I'm going to show this to you here, and I'm just going to give you probably one example, an example that you can clearly see. Now everybody knows that prop wash exists, and the better pilot you are, the least amount of prop wash will be shown in your video. I'm a newbie pilot myself, so I'm going to show you some prop wash here. So I'm going to disable stabilization here, and I'm going to play this clip for you. I'm going to rewind, and this is the marker. If you look on the bottom of my timeline here, as it goes over the marker, you're going to see the prop wash, and you're going to see how well Davinci 17 fixes that prop wash for us using the stabilization option. So we're just going to play it here. I'm at half resolution, and then you can see, you saw that little jiggle over there, that little shake. I'm playing it back in half resolution only because my hardware on my computer cannot handle the playback with OBS recording my screen at the same time. But let me play it back again, and you're gonna see it. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is turn on stabilization, and it's gonna zoom in about 10% because that is the crop that we had it set at, and we're gonna play it back. And it is essentially gone. There is no prop wash left to see. So let's play it. And there's nothing there. Isn't that amazing? Davinci 17 has done a great job in removing all of that prop wash that was just right there. Gone. Okay? Just like it wasn't there. And I'm going to disable stabilization. There, you saw that prop wash. So we're gonna go back to the same spot again. We're gonna enable image stabilization, and then we're gonna play it back. And it's not there. It is completely gone. At least from my eyes and my view, I cannot see it. So let's play it one more time. Gone. So that's how awesome the Davinci 17 is able to actually stabilize your FPV footage. Unlike any other stabilization software that I've seen that is not the GoPro Real Steady, that did a really good job. Now the question now becomes, when do I edit my video, the strength portion of my video, and why would I use the strength portion of the stabilization section in my video? So I have another marker back here, and I'm going to rewind all the way back here, and then I'm going to show you something pretty interesting. So I'm going to disable stabilization. We're going to get a little bit more real estate. So the drone will fly down this driveway, hang a right turn, and go up, and it's going to look like a drone flying, you know, just regular, and it's going to go up just like that, no problem. So let's watch that one more time. You're not going to see any issues, and this is without stabilization. Okay, no issues whatsoever except bad FPV piloting skills. So I'm going to turn on stabilization. I'm going to restabilize this clip with the baseline, suggested baseline of a strength of 1.0. And then we're going to take a look at what it did and why you would want to readjust the strength option when this thing is done. So I'm going to play this back now. Same area. And wait a minute, did you see that? That almost looked like, and for a while I thought my computer was struggling with some hardware issues, but that's not the case. This happens because of the stabilization. Let's press play again, and you're going to see it right there. You saw that little jerk it kind of like zooms in and zooms out. It kind of like jerks or wobbles or does some wonky thing with your video. Let's play it one more time. There, you saw it? Okay, now we know for number one, you wouldn't want to use the cropping function or to crop it even more, because that has nothing to do with the actual stabilization of the video, because when you disable stabilization or the option and you play it back, there's nothing wrong with this area over here. There's no jitters, jags, or whatever you want to call it, or wonkiness to the video. So it's not going to be the actual cropping of the stabilization. It's going to be the stabilization and how it's stabilizing the video in the first place. So when you enable this stabilization and then you play it back and you see that little jerk that just happened right there, you're gonna want to, after you stabilize your video, go through the whole video clip of your stabilized video to make sure none of that happens. And if you do see something like that, you're gonna want to turn down the strength to, say, I would say go down 5 points every single time. So you stabilize, you go down to 0.950, you stabilize. If that doesn't take it away, then you go to 0.900, and so on and so forth. I know for this video clip, because I've already done it specifically for this video, that I have to go all the way down to about 0.700. I'm going to restabilize this video clip, and then once that's done, we're going to play it back and see if we still have that wonkiness or that little jerk in the video. Now, something to take into consideration, the strength, again, the higher the strength, the more stabilized video you're going to get, or the more Davinci is going to try and stabilize your video. If you go too low or all the way low, then you pretty much not going to get any stabilization in your video anyway. So it's very important that you bring this down in increments, very slowly, and then one by one you go to the section of your video that didn't look good, and then just restabilize it. And so we're just going to play it back without stabilization, just so you can see that there's no zoom in, zoom out over there, no wonkiness, no weird stuff going on in the video. We're going to turn stabilization back on, but with the strength, the only change that we made was the strength being at 0.700, and we're going to play this clip back, and the video is stabilized, and there's no wonkiness, there's no zoom in, zoom out, there's no jerking or whatever the case may be. We're just going to play it back again, a lot more smoother, but none of the jerkiness in the video. So that's when you're going to want to edit the stabilization portion of your video, and when you see those kinds of jerks and moves like that, you want to just adjust the strength.
With you, the sun is shining 24/7. 'Cause when we're together, it feels like we're in heaven. If it will get dark, you'll be my million stars. I know I can lean on you. Oh, you catch me like a leaf falling from a tree. If I'll be a shooting star, you make a wish. No, I don't fake this kind of feeling, never felt so real. My heart is on the table 'cause you're my everything. I do, I wanna marry you. 'Cause when you're around, I know it's true. The way you make me feel is so good, baby. So good, so good. Every single day we spend apart, I wanna be with you. Baby, take my hand, hold it tight just like you do. Feels so good, so good. When I wake up in the morning and I see your face, I'm becoming blind by your dazzling grace. What a beautiful feeling to be close to you. There's nothing else I wanna do. Ooh, and from the fields of flowers you chose to pick me. You're spreading sugar on my misery, and I don't fake this kind of feeling, never felt so real. My heart is on the table 'cause you're my everything. I do, I wanna marry you. 'Cause when you're around, I know it's true. The way you make me feel is so good, baby. So good, so good. Every single day we spend apart, I wanna be with you. Baby, take my hand, hold it tight just like you do. Feels so good, so good.
right, guys, thank you very much for watching this video. If you're as excited as I am to go stabilize your video footage in Davinci 17, yeah, hit that like button because that would be pretty cool. Now, if you run into problems with Davinci 17 and stabilizing your video, please post a comment in below, because I do understand that everybody's video footage is going to be different. There's different scenarios, different variables in everybody's video, and I don't know how this stabilization function in Davinci actually functions, so it may have different results for everybody's video. So if it doesn't work out for you, please post a comment below, let me know. I'm curious to hear how well it works or how well it doesn't work. Anyways, thanks again for watching, and I hope this helped you. If it did, you know, that makes me happy. So yeah, you know, consider subscribing here. Go check out my other channel if you want. If not, then either way, have a good day, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. All right.
Baby, so good, so good. Every single day we spend apart. I wanna be with you.